Three, two, one. Hi everyone, welcome back to a new run of History Live interviews. I'm very happy to be back interviewing some of your favorite historians, Egyptologists, and general interesting people. My guest tonight is an Egyptologist in a class of his own. He is a passionate storyteller with a keen eye for ancient art, over 100 publications to his name, and has been featured in over 100 documentaries, including my own Nefertari documentary. His drive is so inspirational to so many. He is none other than Dr. Bob Bianchi. Hi, Dr. Bob.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Pleasure to be with you, Curtis.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining. It's an honor to now finally meet you.
Yep.
Sort of.
Wonders of science and cyberspace. So good to be with everybody.
Exactly. We have to keep moving with the new times. So, Dr. Bob, we all feel that we know you because you're so familiar to us, because we've seen you in so many ancient Egyptian documentaries. But I'd like to get to know you a little more today, if that's okay.
Well, we'll try.
We'll try. So let's start at the very beginning. What was your first passion as a child?
That's an interesting question that a lot of people ask me. I first have to explain that my familial background is is Greece and Italy. My maternal grandparents are first generation Greeks. They came to the United States. My paternal grandparents came a little bit earlier. As a toddler, my mom worked. My dad was in the Marine Corps on the Pacific Front. And so my babysitter was my maternal grandmother, Yaya. I spoke Greek before I spoke English. And in order to entertain me, I was regaled with stories and legends of ancient Greece and Rome rather than Grimm's fairy tales or Cinderella. So I think that from that very, very early stage, I was imprinted. And that imprint was reinforced by my paternal grandparents, Nonna Marcella and Nonna Rosa. Nonna Rosa also only spoke Italian. And from that part of the family, I was introduced to the grandeur that was ancient Rome. Mm-hmm. So from a very, very early age on both sides, when I visited family, I was constantly reminded of the classical heritage from which I was born. Yeah. And you also have to remember that my maternal grandparents had relatives in Alexandria, Egypt. And so Egypt was also part of that melting pot of information that I had from a very, very early young age. And I was imprinted, I never left it. And in high school, I majored in Latin because that was the easiest way I could to make some kind of an intellectual connection with my family background.
Yeah. That's very interesting that you're from a Greek and Italian background. I have my Greek Tia, which I would call her Auntie Rose. And she used to, when I was very young, I used to go visit her, and she used to read from, mythology books and tell me stories about ancient Greece. So that was probably where you were also first exposed to the ancient world, right?
Yeah, that certainly was at a very, very early age, actually. Yeah.
And what stories from your childhood that you used to hear about ancient Greece or ancient Rome, what was the one story that was like, wow?
In all of this, I don't think I had a eureka moment. I just think it was the cumulative effect of being immersed in that kind of an ambiance that had its effect on me. A light bulb didn't go on. Yeah. It built cumulatively, and it's always stayed with me.
Yeah. And so you would say then that your family were also very interested in history?
I don't I wouldn't say they were very interested in history. I would say that they were not discouraging. My parents always urged me to be able to go to college. That was something that was very, very important in the family. And my career path was something that I could choose by myself. I did not have any interference in making those decisions.
Yeah. Okay, so they were very supportive, obviously, when you decided to start studying art history and things like that.
Yeah, I had very, very supportive indeed.
Yeah, yeah. And, out of all the ancient civilizations, why do you think Egypt captured you so much more than the others, let's say?
Well, yeah. Um, and as an undergraduate, I majored in Greek, Latin, and also art history. And then in graduate school, my master's degree was in Greek and Roman art and archaeology. And as I moved on to try to get a topic for the PhD, without trying to be nasty here, almost everything that I was interested in about Greece or Rome, there was somebody who had already written, because they've been doing Greek and Roman art since the Renaissance and even from Roman imperial periods. So the only way to find an interesting topic that I could write upon was to try to plunge into Egypt, because Egyptology was a fairly recent discipline. My cultural background in Greece and Rome wanted me to try to find a new frontier, terra incognito, as it were, incognita, that somehow combined my training and interest in Greece, Rome, and Egypt. And I chose as a topic the draped striding male figure of Ptolemaic Egypt, which was about 160 statues that nobody had really studied as a group up to that point. And the idea was to try to figure out if they were influenced by Greece or if they were Egyptian. And so there was a lot of interconnecting questions. A lot of them were inscribed in hieroglyphs on the back pillar, which meant that I had to read the language. And so it was a great topic, because my interest in Greece, Rome, Italy, and Egypt and the hieroglyphs all kind of like came together. And I was able to try to unravel something that was relatively new and unexplored. And some of the work that I did in 1976 on that still, it's still valid. 50 years later, people are still referring to the articles that I wrote in the late 70s about this topic, because those suggestions and theories that I had still obtained despite modern research and the advancing in the field. So I feel very, very happy and very proud about that accomplishment.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned about the statues. So from your research, what did you find? Was it influenced by Greece, Rome?
No, if you started to really look at the evidence, the statues were actually designed according to Egyptian design tenets. They were sculpted according to Egyptian design tenets. And the superficial feeling that they had sometimes Greek influence because the body was revealed from underneath the drapery turned out to be completely bogus, because we have form-fitting revealing bodies already in the Old Kingdom and in the Middle Kingdom. So everything that people erroneously attribute to Greek influence was already part and parcel of the Egyptian canon. And I traced it all the way from Dynasty 26 into the Ptolemaic period. So I was able to demonstrate continuity and tradition.
Yeah, yeah. That's wonderful. That's wonderful that you could, prove that. So, as you said about where you studied, in 1976, I'm going to read this. In 1976, you received a PhD from New York University's Institute of Fine Arts, specializing in art, historical criticism, and aesthetics, with concentrating on both the ancient and contemporary art. It's a mouthful. What did your family think when, or your friends even think, when you told them, this is what I'm studying?
I don't think it was a shock to anybody. It was the genesis, if you will. Some of my faculty advisors were the ones that looked at me and they said, you're going to have a degree in Greek, Roman, and Egyptology or history. you're not going to find a job, but you're in New York City. And New York City is the hotbed of contemporary art. It was one of the major world centers. So the received wisdom was, if you can understand a lot about contemporary art, you'd be very, very well equipped for a job, because you had the genesis, the origin of it, and you had the end of it. And being a critical art historian, I was able to bring the tools of both disciplines, kind of like the bear, and they thought that would make me imminently employable instead of imminently unemployable. And then I should also point out that there was something in the air about that time, because two of my classmates went on to become museum directors in their own right. Kind of like that was really strange, but down the road, that's what happened. And another classmate of mine became an Egyptologist in his own right and still serves at a major institution here in the United States. So the group of art historians that I was involved in at the time, we all kind of like pursued career paths that were basically on a parallel track. I became a curator. I also was a college lecturer. So it was kind of like contagion in the air. We all had the right teachers that put us in the right direction. I think that's made us very, very fortunate as well.
Well, I think I can speak for everyone when I say we are very grateful that you and the group of people were in that class.
Yeah.
So where do you think that then your how do I say this word? Museological and Egyptological career really started?
It began in graduate school. And here again, I've got to, I was taught by Bernard V. Boatmer in the years that I was studying under him. He was the head of the Department of Egyptian Art at the Brooklyn Museum, and he was also a professor at the Institute of Fine Arts. And what people do not understand about art history is you can go into a museum or be on an archaeological dig, and you can look, okay? Anybody can look.
Yeah.
But looking is not seeing. And what Bernard Boatmer taught me how to do was to see. And by looking at statues, according to what I learned from Bernard, I was able to see things that very few other people can see. And so ever since that, I become fascinated with objects. Working in a museum is something that I absolutely love, because it's like a kid in a toy store. I can hold things, I can look at them, I can see, and then I can write about them. And I think that's, for me, that's the high of the job, is being able to work with an object, interpret it, explain it, and then present it to a wider audience to tell them what they are really looking at. And this is what you should see when you look at a statue or when you look at a work of art.
Exactly. Look at the symbolism within what you're looking at. A lot of people don't notice that. Yeah. And, also what I think is great is, with what you study, you can also, it helps to prove to people, because a lot of people see Egyptian art and, non-Egyptologists will go, oh, but they all look the same. And that's totally not true.
Yeah, and that's the difference between looking and seeing.
Exactly.
And that's a very, and it's sometimes very difficult to do that. I teach, and it's very, very hard to impart how you look and how you see to students. So it's not something that everybody can do.
Yeah, exactly. I love just sitting with a coffee table book and looking at the art on the walls and the statues, and then you start to see the differences between the depictions. So yeah, I can understand your passion there. Yeah. So you went from working at the Met, and then you became the curator of the Egyptian section at the Brooklyn Museum. Was that a very pressured job?
Anybody that works anywhere knows sometimes work is a pain in the butt. And working in a museum, there's a lot of bureaucratic nonsense that you have to deal with, and a lot of petty garbage. So what I did and what I tell my students to do is when you get a memo or when you get a directive that's something that is absolutely in your mind a waste of time, petty nonsense, just a pain, okay? Get rid of it. I mean, do what has to be done and get out of it. Because if you stop, you're going to get another one tomorrow, and all of a sudden it's going to be this mountain of stuff that's going to be absolutely a pain.
Yeah.
So what I did is I get one of these directives that was really nuisance and irksome, and I took care of it right away, knowing that as soon as it was off my desk and out of my hands, I could go to an object. I could have it on my desk or in the studio of my technician or in the storeroom, where I could play with it, look at it, see with it. And I have the resources of the Wilbur Library, at that time, one of the great research facilities in the world, to be able to do the research. And so in my life, the trade-off was, yeah, I've got all of this nonsense to deal with. But after I deal with it,
then the fun starts.
Because nobody can bother me. And yeah, and so you learn how to get rid of the problem immediately so it didn't interfere with the intellectual fun part of the job. And that's really what I enjoy doing. So the nonsense really didn't bother me. It's water off a duck's back. Get rid of it. It's easy to get rid of. And then go on and do what's really important.
Exactly, exactly. It's sort of like doing your homework and then you get to, play with your friends afterwards.
Play balls. Yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah.
Well, I want to congratulate you because you have recently been named as Chief Curator of the Ancient Egyptian Museum in
Shibuya.
Yeah. Shibuya in Tokyo.
Right.
How do I, hold on, someone's joined and I've lost you.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry. So yeah, you've recently become the curator of the Egyptian section at the Shibuya Museum in Tokyo.
Right.
And for which you are now preparing a major traveling exhibition.
Yep.
What can you tell us about this exhibition?
The Ancient Egyptian Museum in Shibuya has the largest number of Egyptian works of art that are publicly accessible in any Japanese collection. There may be private collectors in Japan that have more Egyptian art, but in terms of sheer numbers that's visible and open to the public, this is it. And many of these objects are not known to the general public. They're certainly not known to specialists in the field. And so I'm very, very privileged to work with the owner, Mr. Tadashi-san Kikugawa. And we're now working to put the objects into categories and then write essays about those categories and then do an exhibition. So for example, the categories include Egyptian religion, Egyptian kings, Egyptian daily life, Egyptian life after death. We've got a section on the Napoleonic campaign, and the Ancient Egyptian Museum is working in tandem with colleagues in Egypt, working at the Pyramid of Meidum. So we'll have a little section on the archaeological work that the museum is doing. And the museum's director, Tadashi-san, is very, very much involved in ancient glasses and glazes. He has a PhD actually in the non-destructive analysis of glass and glazes. And so there will be a chapter that he and his colleagues will write, I'm not writing it, that will deal with the data bank of information we have about glass and glaze and how one can date it based on chemical profiles that are done in a non-destructive technique. So it'll be a little bit of art history, a little bit of archaeology, a little bit of technology. And it'll show that the Ancient Egyptian Museum in Shibuya is kind of like a rounded organization. Not only is it art historical, it is also technical, but it is also archaeological. And we're happy with that kind of a collaboration. The show is scheduled for sometime in 2022.
Okay, okay. So that should be very exciting that we'll have some of these lesser known objects traveling around so some of us can see them up close.
Yeah, it would be great.
Yeah, yeah.
The catalog also, it'll be a bilingual catalog. So if you don't need, it'll have wonderful pictures, obviously. And if you can't read Japanese, there's going to be an English text. That'll be the concept is the English text will be translated to Japanese, the Japanese text into English. So you'll have a bilingual catalog so everybody can enjoy reading it and consulting it.
Do you speak Japanese?
All I can say is sushi and sake, and those are the only two words you need to know, and you're good to go.
Yeah, yeah. So from Japan, we're now jumping to Egypt.
Okay.
When was the first time that you visited Egypt?
Early in 1971, 72, early 70s for the first time. And I did that. I got a scholarship, a traveling fellowship from the Institute of Fine Arts. And that enabled me to go. And I spent, I think, June, July, August. I was there in the summer, in 1971 or 72. I can't remember the exact date.
Egypt must have been quite different in the 70s, I'm sure.
Yes, it was very, very different. Very, very different indeed. And if you compare Egypt today with what Egypt was in 1972, exponential leap forward in progress and what creature comforts, et cetera, et cetera. Just to give you an example, when I first visited Egypt, there was a very, very limited number of soft drinks that you could buy. Most of them were locally manufactured. And now you go to Egypt and you've got anything you can find in a modern European American supermarket in terms of soft drinks. The whole gamut is there. And that just gives you one window about just how far the progress has been in that country. I'm proud to see that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, talking about soft drinks in Egypt, I found that they sometimes have even better ones than elsewhere.
Yeah, that's also that's true. Okay.
For everyone watching, there's one called it's not an advert. There's a pomegranate Schweppes. Try that. I think it's only available in Egypt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So when you first visited Egypt, which place that you visited, which site that you visited, did you feel a connection to?
The immediate connection was when I was in Alexandria, actually, for several reasons. Number one, it's the storied city, huh? It's the city of Alexander the Great and Cleopatra, but it's also my maternal grandparents, Papu, and his family. My grandfather, my mother's father, actually came to America. He lived on the island of Samos, and then he migrated, he came to Alexandria where he worked on the dockyards in order to be able to save enough money to book passage on a boat to the United States.
Wow.
So visiting Alexandria brought back vicarious memories. I did not know what house or what street or what neighborhood my grandfather had lived in, but I knew that because the resources that were available in Alexandria were able to enable him to financially get to the States. Yeah. So I felt kind of like that was very, very moving for me. And then being raised Greek Orthodox by my maternal grandparents again, the history of the early Christian church has deep, deep roots in Alexandria, as does episodes in the New Testament. So just being there with a cultural background, a religious background, a familial background, I thought I was actually stepping on the ground and maybe something that was coming through my body. And I was being infused with where my roots really were. And that was a moving experience for me.
Yeah, that must have been quite amazing. Yeah, yeah. So tell me, when you were growing up or when you were studying, which Egyptologists do you think inspired you?
Hands down, it had to be Bernard V. Bultmer. my doctor's father, because as I mentioned earlier, he taught me how to see. But then the other interesting thing is, sometimes this happens, huh? As I left as I started to publish and work on my career, and the years kind of then we get a little old, I started to challenge a lot of what Bernard thought about, what Bernard wrote about. And I remember distinctly, I did 1988, I did an exhibition in Brooklyn called Cleopatra's Egypt, Age of the Ptolemies. And I took Bernard to task time and again for what he had written. And at a cocktail party in New York, Bernard was quoted as whimsically remarking, after I read that guy's book, I thought my first name was Contra, because everything in the book was Contrabolt Company. And we never spoke. I mean, after there was a big rupture, because he taught me how to see, and what I was seeing was not what he was seeing. And so we had this clash until a wonderful symposium, Alexandria and Alexandrianisms, at the J. Paul Getty Museum. It was one of the last public conferences that Bernard was invited to participate in. And I was also invited to participate. So I gave a paper on, is there really such a thing as Alexandrian art, which I challenged. And Bernard gave a paper in which he recanted many of the positions that he had espoused in the past. And if you get a hold of the proceedings, Alexandria and Alexandrianisms by the Getty Museum, Bernard's lecture, like my lecture and everybody else participated, was published in that volume. And if you look at Bernard's conclusions, he has 7 conclusions about how to look at Ptolemaic art. The overwhelming number of them are recanting of his position, and the footnote that he cites in support of his recanting are articles that I wrote. So at the end, he came around, and that was a watershed moment, because from that moment on, Bernard and I could have a civilized intellectual discussion. And the daggers that were drawn and the antipathy that we may have had before that completely vanished. And so I'm very, very pleased to say that toward the end of his life, the rapport that I had with him as a graduate student writing a dissertation came back to the point where it should have probably been throughout the duration of our mutual academic life together. And I think that was very important, but I think it's the lesson there to learn, is I feel that I'm part of a continuum, a continuum. Bernard comes from a school of German scholars that really laid the foundation. Bernard then miraculously, wonderfully, intellectually built on that foundation. And then he opened doors by which I could build on what he had built. And so it wasn't so much a battle or a clash of titans. It was more pushing the envelope to really get to where we have to be today. And I feel very, very proud that at the end of that experiment, if you will, we've been able to push the boundaries of scholarship into areas where it had not been prior to that. And I'm grateful that I'm indebted to him. He caused me a lot of grief with the fighting, but in the end, I am who I am
because of him. That is amazing. That is really amazing. You know, it's like a lot of people, they think if they look up to somebody, they put them on a pedestal, they idolize them, and sometimes they're afraid to meet them in case they disappoint them or they have a different point of view or something like that. So that's incredible that you guys had stopped speaking for a while, but at the end you could agree, basically.
Yeah. It was a wonderful reunion.
Yeah, yeah. So what parts about, what do you enjoy about writing about ancient Egypt?
like a cook inventing a new recipe. I mean, I like to find an object or a subject that hasn't been explored. I don't like to rehash what people have already done, and then figure out just what to say about it, what's new about it. And it's for me, the discovery is working with objects, seeing what objects have to offer, and then writing about that seeing in ways that nobody ever thought before. And that's a rush. I mean, that's cool. That's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, discovering something new, sharing something new.
Yep.
Yeah.
The joy of discovery, indeed.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time to find the answer to one mystery or one question from ancient Egypt, when would that be? What would it be?
No. I would have to buy, Curtis, I need to buy a multiple round trip ticket. Okay. The first thing I would do, I would buy a ticket, go back to the Old Kingdom, and I would speak to Merer. Merer is an official who we know from documents that were found, papyri documents that were found at Wadi Jeref. He was a very, very important official, procuring all kinds of material for the building of the Great Pyramid. Yeah. And so I would love to have been back there and say, hey, Merer, tell me about this pyramid and let's blow these pyramids out of the water that think the pyramids were built by aliens from outer space. That would be number one. Number two, let me go back again to the New Kingdom. We have Akhenaten with this religious revolution. Huh? Mm-hmm. Let me go back and put me in Thebes and let me ask the Egyptian elite, what do you think about this moron who moved the capital to Tel El Amarna and tried to revolutionize Egyptian religion? What do you think about him? Then I want to get a ticket and I want to go back. And I want to walk the streets of Alexandria with Cleopatra the Great. And I want to find out what kind of a woman she really was, because of all of the nonsense that we have a lot about her biographies that people make. And then you got to give me another ticket, because I want to go back to Alexandria during that early Christian period, where all of the heresies were boiling in this pot and they were trying to figure out this issue and that issue and that issue. And it is during that period that the tomb of Alexander the Great vanishes from the pages of history. And I would like to be able to go back there and figure out what the circumstances were. And did we really lose that tomb or what that? So there are, no, not one trip, Curtis.
Okay.
You got to get me back. I want to have frequent flyer miles to just keep doing this endlessly.
We'll get you all the coupons and everything that you need. So yeah. Well, definitely the Pyramidiates, like you said, proving about the Great Pyramid, that would be a great start to get things moving along again.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. So, you mentioned finding out about how the pyramid was built and things like that. But when you're researching a subject and you're writing about it, how do you go about filtering out all the misinformation?
With a lot of hard work. Okay. Mm-hmm. I have an archive that contains over 1.5 million 3x5 cards. And this is what I'm working on now. This is just from this week. Okay.
1.5 million.
And 1 million, and they're cross-indexed. So now let me look at your question. Okay. There was a book that was written in 2020, just a little while ago. I just happened to get across it right now. The author is trying to link the text of the Rosetta Stone to what he calls shared stellar cultic theories that go back to the dawn of human history. That's the guy. I made a note of that, and my own comments about it. So now, when I'm writing about the Rosetta Stone, or if I'm writing about ancient Egyptian astronomy, or if I'm trying to write about anything about religion, I don't have to worry about doing my research from the get-go. I can go to my archives. I can find this guy, this woman, this person, all of the stuff that they've written. It's cross-indexed. I've got it all in a file. Mm-hmm. I know what the Rosetta Stone says because I can read hieroglyphs. And then I can make a value judgment about whether it's a valid argument or not. So it is my library, which is unsurpassed. I mean, it's millions of books. And my archive that's unsurpassed, that goes with the photographs that's unsurpassed, that enables me to be able to do what I do. And I have to say, in all candor, it's my lovely wife, Anna, who actually was responsible for custom building a black lacquer library shelving system with Japanese black lacquer. And she's the one who gave me as a present a custom built black lacquer, miles and miles of 3x5 card drawers into which I can file all of my 1.5 million 3x5 cards. So Anna has been a very, very instrumental person in helping me organize my library and my 3x5 cards. And I'm forever indebted to her for that. I love her.
Well, it's great that Anna supports you on all of your research. You know, so you have appeared in over 100 documentaries to date. There's going to be more coming, including my own Nefertari documentary. But how did you end up appearing in so many documentaries?
I'll let you in on a little secret, Curtis.
Okay.
Every time I institute or try to initiate a project, I get nowhere. The books that I've written have been initiatives that people have reached out and asked me to write. When I say, hey, I'd like to write a book about this, nobody cares. So after I did a few of these documentaries, and producers and directors and scriptwriters realized the breadth of my knowledge and what I know and what I can bear, and the fact that I am, and I pat myself on the back, I am a communicator, because I can take material and I can synthesize it and present it in a way that people can understand. And so when these individuals in the media realize I know my stuff and I can present it in a meaningful way, they come to me as the explicator. And I owe that. And they're like, what? How do you do that? My secret? I used to watch Johnny Carson monologues at 11:30 at night. Johnny had fantastic, of all the late comedians, Johnny Carson has the very, very best. You have to watch his monologues because
I will check them out.
He's fantastic. He can make the statement, make the punchline, and you get the point. And I tried to imitate that because during my PhD program, I taught full time at a private school in New Jersey. It's really hard to try to teach ninth graders ancient history at 8:30 in the morning. It's even harder to teach Latin 2 to 11th and 10th and 11th graders at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So Johnny Carson and my lesson plan and my books, standing in front of a live audience of kids that had to be taught, enabled me to hone my skill in that particular fashion. And I think that that's what people in TV appreciate about me, that I can package it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, in a way that also relates to the people. I need to obviously watch some Johnny Carson because I've been watching the Sonny and Cher show, and I don't think that those kind of monologues will work.
It's a different, for a different audience. Yes. Okay.
Exactly, exactly. But you know, you mentioned communicating ideas across to people. Do you feel that these documentaries are helpful in inspiring new people to become interested in history?
Well, okay. During my career with all these things, there are some TV programs that I did that I'm embarrassed that I did. I was given a proposal to try to push back on some lunatic fringe ideas. I thought that was a good idea, and then it turned out that the programs were not about that. The programs were about pushing the lunatic fringe, and my participation was very, very limited in trying to push back. That said, we're trying to work now with more rational, more scientifically driven individuals. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you just look at programming in general, what's on TV now and streaming, et cetera, if there were not audience share that these production companies were getting, they wouldn't be doing archaeological films anymore. I mean, the fact that they can demonstrate with audience share that people are watching it is the engine that's driving them to produce more. And it's the engine that's driving them to produce more quality programming. So I think the answer is yes, people want to learn. But I think you also have to, everybody else has to understand, a TV program is a vehicle that provides substantive academic information in the form of entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay? TV programs are not graduate seminars. They are not PhD defense fora.
Exactly.
And so everybody has to understand that the producers have to take a storyline that they have to be able to develop, yeah. And they have to do it in an entertaining way. And some productions take extreme license with that and deviate, mm-hmm. because the media is entertainment, not college. And so I think that your audience, any audience, has to be very, very aware of what are the academic credentials of the people producing the program. Are they into fluff and lunacy, or are they interested in rigorous scientific data? And that's something that your audience has to be able to develop. And I think that we have movie critics. They talk about what happened in the Cannes Film Festival, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't really have a TV critic for the humanities that can actually say this documentary was great, this documentary, forget about it. Mm-hmm. And I think that we might be able to find a forum where we can have that kind of information readily available.
Yeah, yeah. There are a lot of fluff documentaries out there, and I do wish that something I'm trying to do is go back to sort of the older ways of doing documentaries where you can learn something a little bit deeper. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to get back to.
Okay.
So you've obviously visited Egypt many times, but what is a place that you still wish to visit?
Well, again, like the question about my Wayback Machine. No, there's not one place I want to visit. There are places in Egypt that I have not visited ever in my life that I would like to see. And there are places in Egypt where new excavations have revealed new things that were not there the last time I went. So every time I go to Egypt, I try to visit a new place. I try to visit an old place. I just try to be a little bit more up on what's happening. And visiting older sites reinforces maybe what I knew. Sometimes I look at an old site with new eyes. And new excavations always reveal new material. And I'm very, very happy to be able to take advantage of that. So yeah, there's not one site I want to go back. I want to go back and keep visiting. That's the joy.
Yeah. So let's have a little chat quickly about Nefertari.
Okay.
So you have written a book on her, one of which I have and I absolutely love. Strangely enough, my mom bought me your book on Nefertari at a bookstore near to Nefertari's tomb.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I exited the tomb and I got handed the book. I was very happy with that. But for non-Egyptologists out there, she's a little bit unknown. Why do you think that?
She's actually dwarfed by the bigger than life size Ramses II, her husband. Ramses the Great. Ramses the Great is the one for whom Abu Simbel was built. Ramses II is the one who fought that battle against the Hittites. It's in all the books. There's a cuneiform tablet in the lobby of the United Nations building in New York City. That's a copy of the Hittite treaty between the Hittites and Ramses II. It is the first known non-aggression treaty ever signed by two superpowers in the history of the world. And so it's there in the United Nations to show that superpowers can put aside their differences and come together. And so I was fascinated. And again, I was invited to do this at the behest of the J. Paul Getty Museum, because their Getty Conservation Institute was the one that was restoring the tomb of Nefertari. And so the book was published to celebrate the completion of that restoration. In that, I tried to describe her biography, who she was, and I tried to describe what makes the decoration of that tomb so exceptional. Mm-hmm. And the book has gotten a lot of play.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think it's maybe because of her husband that she's a little less known to non-Egyptologists?
Yeah, it's obviously he's overshadowed, and she does not figure very, very prominently in anything. So there was an exhibition in Germany not too long ago to which we contributed on Ramses II, and Nefertari is mentioned, but she's not a major player in the catalog. Yeah. And so I think that talking to you, that's the next program. We do something on Nefertari that nobody else has ever done because we now know that she's a mover and shaker at Abu Simbel. If you read the inscriptions there, the inscriptions say, she is the one for whose sake the sun rises. Mm-hmm. So she has a very, very pivotal role in the solar deification of her husband as a prime priestess. And I think you could use her as a vehicle to try to explain the relatively advantaged role that ancient Egyptian elite women had in society. They were more advantaged, say, than their sisters in Greece and Rome were. So that's a compelling story that needs to be told.
For sure, for sure. Do you think that the ancient Egyptians would appreciate their popularity and the intrigue that they have over us today?
Absolutely. They would be pleasantly surprised. I mean, you go into any tomb in Egypt from the very beginning to the very end of the history, and you see a plea. Please pronounce my name so that I may live forever. And so when we do these documentaries, when we do these programs like this, we're pronouncing names of long deceased Egyptian elite members of society. Yeah. And so we're fulfilling one of their wishes. Yes, we are speaking their name. And by speaking their name, their memory, their activities, their life is being kept alive. Yeah. So I think, they would be pleasantly amused. We are doing inadvertently what they hoped posterity would be doing for them. So like mine, I think they would love it.
Exactly. Well, my final question for you, Dr. Bob, before I take like 2 or 3 questions from the audience, I would like to know, what would you say to people who have doubts about entering Egyptology?
I think that those doubts should be taken seriously. Number one, there is a worldwide retrenching right now where positions in the humanities, particularly ancient areas of the humanities, not only Egyptology, but Greece and Rome and the ancient Near East, are being cut I get messages just about on a monthly basis, writing in support of writing to a university, not to cut an ancient studies program, for example. So I think that I would be very, very remiss if I went up to somebody and said, yeah, be an Egyptologist, everything's copacetic. No, I think the reality is, yeah, you're entering a field that's shrinking. The possibility of you being able to get a job and become gainfully employed is minimal. And it's probably going to get less as time goes on. But if it's something that you really love, and if you are absolutely dead sure that it's going to take priority in your life so that you can become the greatest Egyptologist among the students that you're studying, then go ahead. But if you're going to do it in a lukewarm, no fire in the belly attitude, do something else.
Yeah.
But don't become an Egyptologist.
Exactly. You have to have the passion for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Bob, thank you so much. That was such an insightful talk from you. I feel like I know a lot more about you now. Yeah.
No, thank you.
So I would like to open up to the audience. We'll take about 2 or 3 questions from the audience. So if anybody has a question for Dr. Bob, I'm gonna let you go now. Unmute yourself and ask. Whoever goes first, goes first.
It's me. It's not actually, I'm sorry about this light. It's not actually a question. It's more of an observation, and something struck home with me that Dr. Bob said about there being a difference between looking and seeing. And I really, really agree, because I find that as I've gone through my studies with Egyptology, it's something I've had to train myself to do. It's very, very easy to go and look at these things, but not really see them in depth. You see, like going into Nefertari's tomb, you can be overwhelmed by it all, and you end up not looking at it. It just becomes a blur of colours. And I just think that's something that you really have to train yourself to do, is to actually try and interpret what you're seeing. And I think it's a shame that a lot of people that visit Egypt, I don't ever think get to that stage. They get the overall impression without actually perhaps appreciating it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very true, Vanessa. A lot of people don't look. They see, but they don't. Yeah. Next question. We have a couple people online. I'm sure someone has a question here. Unless we've talked them all out.
I have a comment they made.
Okay, hi.
Hi. It was a very interesting interview, Dr. Bob, and thank you very much for sharing this with me overseas. You know, I am a dear friend of Dr. Bob. I known Bob for over 40 years. And talking about what Vanessa have just said, I have traveled through Egypt a million times because of my business. You know, I'm in the business for so long. But being with Dr. Bob around the sites and about the temples and tombs and so on and so forth, before knowing Dr. Bob, I used to see. But since I knew him, I really started to look. And looking, it's entirely and totally different, because it gives you a lot of understanding of what you are looking at when you really see. So this was only my comment, and thank you very much for that beautiful, beautiful interview. And thank everybody for attending. Thank you again.
Thank you, Abdul.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm gonna give chance for 1 or 2 more questions. We have a lot of people on.
I have a question, if I may.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Carl. How are you? I mean, Curtis. Oh my God, how embarrassing. My question is about hieroglyphs being reintroduced to the Egyptian curriculum. And I wonder what you think the impact of this might be. It's something I'm personally really excited about. I think all kids should learn about hieroglyphs. So how do you think that might impact people in Egypt?
I'm not an educator in Egypt, so I'm not able to address that specifically. But I do think that it is a progressive step forward in order to try to connect the modern population with their past heritage. In the same way that European countries are proud of their medieval or Romanesque heritage. So I think that introducing the hieroglyphs is a way of making that very, very valuable connection. And there's been a push in more recent years to try to get native Egyptians more interested in their own archaeological projects. Zahi Hawass is very, very happy that he's launching missions that are being conducted solely with Egyptians. And so I think this is part of a broader picture of trying to intercalate the modern population so that they get a broader appreciation of their past. And I think it's a laudable initiative.
Thank you, that's great.
Thanks, Sarah, thanks, Sarah. I'm gonna give the opportunity for one more. I know Jill always has a question, so.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Dr. Bob, I know you've done a lot of TV programs and quite a few, I have to say, I've seen myself. But I wonder if there'd ever been a program that had been so edited that it really didn't get across what you really wanted to say.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier to Curtis, I've been on some programs where they were talking about lunatic fringe theories. The proposition was that I would be the pushback. And I pushed back and I ended up on the cutting room floor. So, I have on my bulletin board on a piece of toilet paper the names of the producers and the companies that produce that kind of rubbish. And when I get a call and it's one of those on that piece of paper, I don't talk to them. So I've been burnt, but I'm not going to be burnt again.
That is a good stance to take, I believe. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Same thing happened to Bethany Hughes. You know, she was denied to make documentaries, and she just went out and did it herself and never worked with that producer again. So I think that's a very good stance to take. Yeah.
I just have one question for you. To try to tell the people that are still watching here, you have an initiative that we're kind of like working on. I'm contributing to about not Nefertari but Nefertiti.
Yes.
Would you like to say a few words about that before we end, so that people know that this is previews of coming attractions, so that people understand they want to tune into you again? Please.
Exactly. We are working on a new documentary. Also, Vanessa, who's on, she's in the documentary as well. And we are going to be looking at what we know so far about the search for Nefertiti's mummy. So all the possible theories that could be her mummy or could be her tomb, or if we have her mummy, if it was taken in Victorian times. So we have a couple Egyptologists who will be weighing in with their opinions, and this will be put into a documentary made by myself, and Dr. Bob has very kindly done a really nice presentation which provides a lot of great information about Nefertiti, DNA, and so on. I'm
looking forward to the finished product.
Yeah, me too.
So am I. It's I just had this idea the one day because there's so many theories, and I just thought we have to put these theories into one space so the public can now see everything, because there's so much misinformation out there. We just got to show them this is what we know.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we are done with questions from the audience. I'm going to give it 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay, audience questions have closed. So anyway, Dr. Bob and everybody who joined, thank you so much for tuning in. And Dr. Bob, thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories with us.
Yeah. You're more than welcome. I enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing everybody again. And to those people that I know that have been tuning in, thank you very much for your attention. I love you guys, and I hope that we can continue, Curtis, with doing other programs like this. Thank you.
I hope so. I hope so. Thank you. It's always great to work with someone like yourself who knows their stuff.
Okay.
Goodbye, my brother. I love you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
And stay tuned for the Pompeii documentary.
Sorry.
I said stay tuned for the Pompeii documentary coming out next week. That will be very interesting. Egyptian Secrets at Pompeii.
Look forward to it.
Yeah. Sophia Aziz, who's online, she is.
Oh, right, that's Sophia.
Excuse me.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Sophia.
Hi. Hi. Sorry I'm so late. I've been out all day and I've only just got back. So I feel awful that I missed it. I was excited about this interview.
No problem.
So sorry for being here right at the end.
At least
I'm going to watch it on YouTube, so I'm very excited.
Great, great. Well, at least you made it. Because I
Do
wanted
you hear
you
me?
to... Sorry, yes, Michael.
Yes, hi. I sent a note to the chat, but probably you didn't receive it. And I would like to thank you for this very interesting interview. And I was really surprised by the Greek origin of Dr. Bob. So since I am Greek as well, I would like to know whether he spent, whether Dr. Bob, you spent some time during your childhood in Alexandria or not.
You'll have to repeat that if because I didn't quite get it.
Okay, my name is Michael Michalis, and I am Greek.
Okay.
Okay, and I would like to know whether you spent some time of your childhood in Alexandria.
No, not my. No, Michele, farò parapoli. No, I did not spend any of my childhood in Alexandria. I spent repeated time in Alexandria in the late 70s, all through the 80s and into the 90s. There were times when I was in Alexandria 2 or 3 times a year. Not for long periods of time, but maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. And so I got to know the city very, very well, and the monuments. And so it's still a city that's very dear to my heart. But, you know, I'm as familiar with Alexandria, for example, as I am with Thebes or with Aswan. It's places to go to repeatedly. So I can't say that I have one that's more favorite than another.
Okay. Can I ask one more question? What is the origin of the Greek part of the family in Greece?
What is up?
Which part of Greece?
They live on the island. I still have relatives on the island of Samos, and I still have Italian relatives living in Supino, in Lazio, in Italy. So the roots are still there.
Okay. Thank you very much, all. It was very interesting interview, very interesting night. I hope you're all fine and well. Kalinifta. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And just as an interesting piece to end, I was at some of our Greek friends. I was at a wedding in December last year, and my uncle Steve, he introduced me to the Orthodox priest, and instantly I was now adopted by the Greeks, and they even gave me a Greek name. So my Greek name is Silopoulos.
What is the name?
Silopoulos.
Asilopoulos. Ah, okay, that's
Yeah.
very good. Okay, very, very nice. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much, Dr. Bob. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Okay.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao. Bye. Bye.